Do you think we should have a fully independent body in WADA, or is there as much as can be?
I think it's pretty independent now. And basically, you're talking about doping in sport.
Yep.
So one half of that community is the sport community. The athletes, the IFs, the IOC, the NOCs. And the other half are the governments of the world. And so they're all there. No single stakeholder is in a position to dictate what happens in WADA. If the sport movement doesn't like something that the government members are proposing, all it takes is one to say, no, I don't agree, and you can't get the majority. So that's pretty good. I think, I mean, coming after 10 years after the Ben Johnson thing, where I simply said, look, I have a conflict, and I can't act on that case. When it came to Ross Rebagliati in the snowboard in Nagano, I just said, look, I'm completely conflicted in this. I cannot take part in the decision, nor even in the discussion. Mm-hmm. And so that's you need to have that kind of either a requirement, which we now have it through our ethics commission, or a personal one where you say no. And I remember I got lots of poo in the media, the Canadian media in particular, for not taking part in this discussion. And the implied message there was, well, I'm supposed to be there in the room to defend the Canadian athlete. And they say, no, we're trying to figure out whether he was liable to be tested for this was marijuana. He was kind of the opposite of Bill Clinton. He said he inhaled but didn't smoke, and the other way around. But we kind of personally, I thought we kind of got ambushed when we had the list of prohibited substances, and cocaine and heroin and marijuana had always been on the list because they were illegal in many countries. And so we, in our perhaps lack of wisdom at that point, instead of saying, look, none of these things affect sport performance, certainly in a positive way. If Rebagliati was filled with marijuana and he's going down at a gazillion miles an hour on a snowboard saying, oh, wow, what a mountain, he'd have been part of it in 100 meters. So instead of saying we're a sport organization, that's the limit of our responsibility. If the states, governments want to regulate against the recreational and harder drugs, that's something that they should consider and do. But it's not for a sport organization to make that kind of determination.
An athlete like Sung Yang, who is the Michael Jordan of China, he is the biggest rock star in the whole country. For there to be a threat of taking him down from that podium they put him on, the Chinese government gets involved, and then we talking. I mean, there might be a prime minister calling a prime minister over this. I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do when you are representing a country at the highest level and you are the biggest thing of that country, isn't it?
Well, you can see why you might get caught up in that. But I mean, what you should be saying as the prime minister or president is look, this is, governments don't have any role to play here. This is an entirely private organization. And while we're happy, say, coming up in Beijing to be the host country, we don't run it. I mean, the head of state of China is given one sentence scripted by the IOC, which he or she will say at the opening ceremonies. I declare the games open. That's it.
Yep.
And he said it would not be appropriate for me or my government to insert ourselves into this, particularly when we don't know the facts.
Even being an independent organization, it's hard to separate that, because you mentioned Sun Young, Luke, the tester or the testing assistant was reported to have asked for Sun Young's autograph or to take a selfie with him, right? And so, and there's other countries that they're still locals, and especially if these are sports stars, they're fans, and so there can be still a conflict of interest with the people who are collecting samples, or on behalf of WADA. So even despite the best efforts of the organization to police and to educate and to uphold morals and ethics within the organization, it's a constant battle that you're having to fight, to ensure the integrity of the entire organization, right? So I'm just curious, so maybe to close, because we don't keep too much of your time, is what do you think is the biggest priority? What's the most important thing that either WADA or the world at large can do to combat systematic doping, or just doping in general right now? Like, what's on the horizon? What are your top priorities?
Well, the top priorities would be having rules that are clear, doing your best to educate all of the athletes and the federations and the NOCs about that, and the IOC to some degree, about what they are, how they'll be interpreted, what the standards of proof are, what is the list, how do you make sure that you don't inadvertently take something that you shouldn't, and all you can be sure of is that in the end, the decision will be made by an independent arbitral tribunal that has expertise in sport and doping matters. You're not going to be turned over to a state court where there's no expertise in this sort of thing. There's long, complicated, dragged out procedures. You've got to be able to, we have with CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, during the Olympic Games, we have an ad hoc panel that goes to the host city. And if there's a complaint or an action or a request for arbitration, the reasoned decision of the arbitral panel has to be rendered within 24 hours. So it's kind of drumhead justice, but you get somebody looking at it and independently. Counsel are provided for any athlete or official who's implicated. So it's a pretty good system. But like all systems that are operated by people, there's the occasional mistake. But institutionally, it's pretty well governed and pretty well monitored.
I always felt it was one step behind. Even when I was trained on it in the 90s in McGill, I always remember saying, yeah, but it takes us a year to get this particular chemical formula illegal, and all they have to do is add an OH on it. It was an inert ion, and you have to go through the whole rigmarole. So even back then, I felt that then it was, are you guys keeping ahead, or at least in pace with what's going on, or you have no idea really until it happens?
Well, I think we're a lot better than we were, for sure. But it is a cat and mouse game. As something gets discovered, somebody invents the clear by tweaking that molecule a bit. I think we're much faster at it now, much more able to measure and find microdosing. We've actually got into a very close cooperation with the pharma industry, who are not, they trust WADA not to give away their molecules and put their patents in danger, but saying, what are we looking for? What are the clinical outcomes of using this particular substance? How can you test for it? Because they have to be able to test, to get some of their FDA approvals, and they'll share that with us. And I mean, you can see in the old days where somebody's reading the literature and says, there's a post-cancer treatment with this erythropoietin, produces faster and more red blood cells. Boom, you say, wait a minute. Red blood cells, more blood to the muscles, better performance. Taxi, let's go down and get some of this stuff. And so that took a while, but the cooperation that we started even just before Salt Lake City in 2002. we're able to say when Muleg comes off the hill and tests positive, he's been told this is a variation of EPO that there's nobody knows about it. It's never been tested. It's not for public sale. And we're able to say, guess what we found?
Wow.
Give me back the medal.
Yeah.
So it's improving. I mean, it's experience based, and you got to work through it. But I think the chute is getting narrower for anybody that is going to try and dope. And we've finally got the power to do investigations, which is frankly a lot more effective in finding out doping and encouraging whistleblowers who actually know what's going on to point us in the right direction.
Yeah.
Who should be tested and for what and when and where are the training camps where all this happens, and that sort of stuff is what the investigation I chaired on Russian athletics depended very much on that kind of information, and we were able to get enough information to say, all right, the lab guy is crooked. The lab is totally compromised. Its accreditation should be withdrawn and then removed. We got the IAAF to suspend the Russian National Federation. So we had some really good outcomes, which led to McLaren's report.
That's right.
6 or 8 months later, which was even
more damaging and banned Russia.
Yeah.